All right, everybody, and we are live again here after a long time. So I'm with my good friend Mohammad and another good friend Kali. So how are you two doing,
All good
Mohammad?
at my end.
Yeah. I'm all good as well. Let's see. I think we've got a very unique type of video today, which is very different from what we've done before. So I think we have to be very, very concise and quick about this one, because we're going to be tackling quite a few different types of arguments. So
Right.
let's see what we can do.
Right. So the idea here is, and anybody who's watching or is going to watch, basically, the idea here is we're going to run very short 5 clips from Dawah gangs and try to identify the problems within those short clips and try to answer or try to, find problems within those clips in as short a time as possible. And before we do that, though, what we would ask our listeners to is to just like, subscribe, and share our channel. And we've been talking about sharing our channel, and just make sure that all your friends and family members who might be willing to listen to some of these philosophical arguments or any of these kind of arguments, just send it to them and press the notification bell, so whenever there is a stream, you get the notification and you can join and come and probably even talk to us. So without any further ado, what we're going to do is run our first clip and see what the problems lie within those. What I'm going to do is, all right, okay, what I need to do is, all right, sorry guys, since it's been a long time, I'm having a hard time finding the buttons, basically, right? All right. Can you guys see this screen?
Yep.
All right, let's see. So this is the first one. Let's run.
Bent on convincing us, look at the mountains, look at the electrons, look at the
That's right.
protons.
The second part of the question was that why does Almighty God give references of the mountain that is created this? For him, it is peanuts. Whether you say 1,000 times Allahu Akbar or 1,000,000 times, he cannot become greater. He's already the greatest.
Bill Gates gives me $100. Should I be amazed that he's giving me that money?
I believe that the question has been answered, and unfortunately, we are very constricted for time. You are welcome to come back tomorrow, inshallah. Is a
I'll
very
just
big
give
thank
this
you.
last. He said, if Bill Gates gives you $100,
Should I be amazed?
will you get amazed? Brother, the question is, why should Bill Gates give you $100?
All right, guys, claps. Right, why is he so bent on being prayed or worshipped by his own creation? Basically, is the point, right? So, anybody wants to have a go at it? Kali.
I think this guy is just boring, if I have to be honest. This particular, yeah, it's a boring question, and Zakir Naik gives a boring, unclear answer. Like I just don't understand it. Like, what's the point of this particular? What is this person? What is he asking? I'm not even 100% sure. It's a poorly formed question, and Zakir Naik also gives a poorly formed answer. Am I right?
I think it
Yeah.
might also have to do something with the way it has been edited. Probably, I'm not sure. I've not seen the full video of this question, but from what I have understood of the questions, there are two questions in this video that the guy asked. One is, why does God even? Why does it matter that we praise God or not? Why does it matter for God?
Why does he
Because
want
whether
to be
we,
worshipped,
yeah,
basically?
why does he want to be worshipped or praised? It's a valid question. For God, it shouldn't matter whether we praise him or not. If we are meaningless to him in terms of the fact that we cannot benefit him in any way, so why would he need us to do anything why would he require our gratitude? Now Muslims often try to respond to this to this question by saying that the gratitude or worship towards Allah is not something that Allah needs. It is us. It is we who need this, because it helps us somehow. It makes us grow spiritually. It makes us, let's say, achieve Jannah, that is paradise in the hereafter, which is, you could say that it is a fair enough. I mean, it seems a valid response. But I have what I could ask in as a counter would be, for humans there's an opportunity, there is some sort of space for them to grow into, right? So they can grow spiritually, they can grow, they have to achieve something, they have to go somewhere into the afterlife. But the point is this: God also has angels who worship him and who praise him, and this is all mentioned in Hadith and Quran. The question is this: angels cannot progress in any way, because they are just sort of God's robots. They are conscious robots, but they are robots, and they cannot grow in any way because they don't have any sort of moral responsibility or moral tasks that they have to fulfill. They don't have any tests that they have to go through. Yet God has assigned them a responsibility. God has given them, in fact, some angels have the sole task to praise God. Now, it's such a strange concept, because what God has done is this: he has made angels who are nothing but conscious robots. So these robots do only what God has told them specifically to do, and he created these robots just for the purpose of praising him. Now, what if you would not call that narcissistic behavior? I don't know what would you consider narcissistic behavior. So that, I think, it's a valid response. It might be a bit longer than I wanted it to be, but this is, I think, a valid
No,
response. It's a valid question.
perfectly fine. Yeah. All right.
But
Shall
what
we
he's
move
what
on to
did
the?
Zakir Naik say? I didn't even understand what he said. He didn't. I didn't understand Zakir Naik.
You want me to play it again?
And yeah, play it again.
Sure.
Play it from the start.
Even if I believe how almighty he is, how knowledgeable he is, why is he so bent on convincing us? Look at the mountains, look at the electrons, look at the
That's right.
protons.
The second part of the question was that why does Almighty God give references of the mountain that is created this? For him, it is peanuts. Whether you say 1,000 times Allahu Akbar or 1,000,000 times, he cannot become greater. He's already the greatest.
Bill Gates gives me $100. Should I be amazed that he has given me that money?
I believe that the question has been answered, and unfortunately, we are very constricted for time. You are welcome to come back tomorrow, inshallah. Is a
I
very
just
big
give this
thank you.
last. Is that if Bill Gates gives you $100,
Should I be amazed?
will you get amazed? Brother, the question is, why should Bill Gates give you $100?
It's a very bad, poorly edited video. I think it
Right.
cuts off
Poorly
his
edited.
question. The answer isn't even complete. So it's a very poorly cut off video, poorly edited video. So I'm not sure we can respond. We might be even whether we are even answering the right question or the question that he was asking.
Right. And
but
also,
from what I gathered, I tried to respond to that. I do have one more point that I'd like to raise, particularly for the last part, where where
exactly.
it seems like Zakir Naik sort of hit a home run, right, by responding to this guy by saying that the question is, why would Bill Gates even give $100? By which what Zakir Naik is trying to imply is, the fact is, why does God need to give anything to humans, right? So that is, and so what he's trying to say is, if God gives anything to humans, even a dime, even we should be grateful to God for even that. So because he doesn't need to give us anything. Well, I respond to this by this saying this: God is the one who made us dependent on certain resources. We cannot survive without certain resources. Now, he made us dependent on these resources. He could have made us independent of these resources. For example, again, I'll mention angels. Angels don't need food, don't need money, don't need any air to breathe, right? So he doesn't. So if God gives them air to breathe, to angels, give them food to angels to eat, for angels these are worthless items, right? But why? Because the angels are not dependent on that. God did not make angels dependent on these things. God made us dependent on certain resources. Then, after making us dependent on these things, after that, if God doesn't give us these resources, then I would say that whether such God is a good or a merciful God, or he is an evil God. So that is indeed a question. Why wouldn't God give us certain resources, or at least the minimum required resources to survive, if he did in fact make us dependent on these?
Agreed. I think there's nothing much to add to what Kelly's already said. So we shall move on to the next video. All right.
Yeah, yeah. I think the video was a bit too boring to really. I mean, for me to add any extra contribution to that.
Right, right.
What it kind of looks like he's saying is that, if I had to make it a bit more sophisticated, is the idea that God is in a perfect state. So this is what in the philosophical literature, a variant of the problem of evil, like Justin Schellenberg's arguments. You know, God is in a perfect state. Why would God need to move from a perfect state to make an imperfect universe? Right? So the question of what the questioner is saying does have a resemblance of these sort of arguments, reminiscent of these sort of arguments, that you have a perfect, unalterable creature in a self-sustaining, self-sufficient state, and then it moves from that self-sufficient state to wanting to be worshipped, and it creates an imperfect existence, and then you have these imperfect creatures who are worshipping it, and that seems to be on the model of a perfect entity, like a God, inconsistent, or at least contradictory. It doesn't fit well with God's attributes, to wanting to create an imperfect world where there's beings worshipping him, right? Even if it is the case that these creatures that he creates, some of them require him, it doesn't make any sense that he needs to create any creatures that require him, right? Because by definition, a perfect existence cannot be improved, and it doesn't require changing, right? And a changeless being won't move from a changeless state to a changed state. But to say that there is a world full of imperfect creatures that he needs worship from, or because we need worship, we need to worship this being, doesn't make a lot of sense, because it's already a perfect being. So there's a collision there that doesn't make a lot of sense. And Zakir Naik's answer also kind of emphasizes that contradiction, because he thinks he's answering it, but he's not, by saying that why should Bill Gates give anything? Like, why should God give anything? Well, that is the point, right? So Zakir Naik kind of just shot himself in the foot. Exactly. That is the point. Why should God?
Yeah.
So there's a tension here also. There's a tension of the general problem of evil. If God is a merciful, benevolent being, compassionate being, then if there is imperfect creatures, he should, and he's perfectly loving, perfectly merciful. Again, we have the general problem of evil coming into play. If God gives something, it'll never be enough if he's a perfectly loving being, perfectly compassionate, perfectly merciful being, if there is imperfection in the creation, because a limited amount of compassion is not enough for a perfectly compassionate being. But then again, so the tension here is that if there is a world in which there are imperfect creatures who are suffering, let's say there's a lot of suffering in this world, animals are dying, people are being raped and tortured, some people are being starved, right? God giving even 1% is not enough. 2% is not enough, because God is a type of being that is supposed to eliminate or eradicate that sort of suffering. The existence of suffering, therefore, raises a question of whether or not we have this sort of perfectly omnibenevolent, perfectly merciful being. So that's the first tension. But then again, that tension is colliding with another tension, which is why create that imperfect world to begin with, right? Why does he need to create a world where there are dependent creatures that require worship, not for himself, but yourself, for ourselves, right? These are a plethora of different type of questions that collide with one another. In the first instance, why is there a world? In the second instance, if there is a world, why is he not doing everything he can to alleviate suffering from the world? And not, why should we be impressed by the very, very minuscule or minimal acts of how he's created a mountain, how he's given you a bit of shelter, how he's given you a bit of food, right? Because in his perfecthood, you expect a lot more. You expect because of the problem of evil. So I think these are some of the things that are coming out of the question, and Zakir Naik's answer doesn't really deal with it impressively.
Yeah, Madan, and we can say one thing, and I'll close this here, and then we move on to the next video. Is that the definitional problem here is in the attributes of the God, or whichever God you are talking about. It is of justice and mercy, or benevolence, right? Benevolence, they are colliding with each other, because basically, when you say you created them and you want them to, worship you for their own good, and then this God is going to do justice, that's colliding with the mercy, basically. In anyways, we're going to move forward, right, to the next next one.
Is you can do whatever you want so long as you don't harm anyone else. You should include the incest as well. They get so angry, and one of them said it's not natural. I said, wait, hold on 1 second. You're saying it's not natural for the brother and the sister to be together. I agree with you. But we also say it's not natural for the man and the man to be together. Isn't that right? And this is what happens when you don't have a book telling you what is right and what is wrong. They make their own things up, and they end up destroying their lives. If the idea is you can do whatever you want, so long as you don't harm anyone else, you should include the incest.
All right. So here is the problem of incest. I think we have dealt with this problem in one of our earlier streams, probably one of the very early streams, maybe. And then we did point out that there are issues with it, right? Why incest is not favored
I don't think we've ever covered incest.
Okay, all right. Maybe my memory is not serving me well. But so,
I'll say, I'll just address, because I think that is the only point that is worth addressing. The response that he's trying to respond to, I think, that it's natural or not, that is not a fair argument to make. So that's why I wouldn't discuss that. What I'd respond to is the fact is how he's trying to deal with the no harm principle, and he's saying that if there is no harm, that is the primary principle that we are basing our morality or our behaviors upon, then why shouldn't we allow incest? Well, the basic point being, we do know that incest is harmful, so we would not allow incest for that very reason. Second point, even if you say, because Muslims often say, well, what if the siblings use contraceptives, and then therefore they remove that risk. Now, what I would say, and what generally the view is, that there is still the risk of them, the overall risk by such behavior would still increase, because if you allow this thing, the use of contraceptives, allow them to commit incest while using contraceptives, you are still giving them, allowing them this certain activity, which if encouraged could lead to further risks, right? Let's say if sometimes siblings doesn't use contraceptives because of for whatever reasons. Now, what the primary question that I'll ask Muhammad Hijab is, let's say Muslims ask what they are trying to, their question is, and let me, steelman their argument. So what they're saying is, let's remove every negative aspect from incest. That is, incest, whatever harm it can do, let's say somehow we have now built the technology to remove everything negative that was there, which was attached with incest. Now, would you allow incest? Well, I'd say, well, my point would be yes, if there is no harm from an action, then there should be no problem in doing that. My counter question to hijab and Muslims would be, why does God? So you say that it, according to you, it would still be wrong because your book says it is wrong, which means that God says it is wrong. My question is this: if God says something is wrong, does He prescribe something as good or evil, or good or bad, based on some rationale or wisdom, or is it just a random order? If it is just, if it is based on a rationale, then what rationale is it? Isn't it to avoid a certain harm or to achieve a specific good goal? If it isn't that, then the only other option remains is that it is a random order. It is
Yeah.
just a
It's
random
arbitrary,
arbitrary,
basically.
it is an arbitrary order from God. So according to
Yeah.
you, even if we remove every negative aspect from incest, you would still say that it is wrong because God said so.
God says so.
Then we'd say that then you're agreeing that God's order itself was arbitrary, entirely arbitrary, and then your entire moral framework, I don't know which argument is arbitrary, which rule is arbitrary or not, and your whole moral framework is just based on arbitrary rules and regulations. It's nothing else. So your argument becomes, I mean, it's nothing then. You're just trying to prove nothing. Just
And
arbitrary rules, right?
Clearly, at this point, Muslim would respond, and wrongly so, that no, God's nature is good, and His goodness includes that incest is wrong, basically, right? And you see that the problem is, again, you're shifting
Again,
the problem one
so you're coming
step
back to the
further,
same point then.
basically.
It means there is
Yeah,
something good in not committing incest, which means
right.
you're inadvertently or unconsciously you're saying the same thing. There is a no harm principle underlying this, your moral framework as well. At least this is what the Muslim is trying to pose, but they're not conscious. They're not saying that consciously or not actually spelling it out that way. But indeed, that is what they're trying to say, right? So I
Right,
would say
right,
that it's a meaningless argument.
right. And
They don't see the fallaciousness of their argument.
Martin, you wanted to say something? Should I add one point before I give the mic to you? Just the power dynamics. Let's suppose we get to the harm principle thing here, and then within that, it might be tagged wrong based on the power dynamics within the family. Basically, you have strong power dynamics within the family members. Dads have certain rights over moms have certain rights over dad, and they both have certain rights over children. In case that the incest is permitted between two individuals in a family, where there is a situation where there might be power dynamic situations arising, it might be harmful for both, especially for the one who's who's being dominated by the other one. And in a homosexual relationship, this power dynamic usually doesn't take place. It might. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't. Probably between two homosexuals, it might happen that one is probably older and commands that, at least demands, not commands, but it demands that power dynamic, which is more likely to happen in a familial relationships, basically. And the other argument against that is also, so let's say this is true, that what he's saying, that unless until a book says that you don't commit incest, our book says that. So basically, if you are a Muslim, do you when you are a Muslim, do you feel that attraction, and then when you read a book that it says no, you don't have to get attracted to your family members, does that happen? So, or is it your innate nature that you don't get attracted to your family members, basically? So if that's true for innateness of this attraction, that it doesn't happen, so then you don't need a book to tell you that you don't have to do this, right? Anyway, Martin, mic is yours.
Yeah. So in regards to incest and so on, the idea that the parallel with homosexuality is if you predicate on the grounds that there is no harm with homosexuality, and therefore it's that it should be legally and morally acceptable behavior, precisely because two people getting together doesn't cause any harm. Now you can apply the same logic to incest and rationalize that, and also make the argument that incest, there's nothing wrong with incest either, right? So one of the main problems here that Mohammad Hijab is trying to express is something that is maybe like morally counterintuitive as a result. That we realize there's something wrong with incest, but if you apply the harm principle to its logical conclusion, then it will justify incest, and there'll be nothing morally objectionable about incest. However, because we have intuitions that suggest that incest is wrong, and we can't validate that intuition using the resources on an atheistic, naturalistic universe, where we try and use the equations of harm, for example, or maybe something else, maybe like a deontological principle, or maybe a utilitarian analysis, and none of those successfully, none of those successfully show that incest in all circumstances is wrong, then there's something wrong with that moral theory, because it leads to a counterintuitive result. It leads to us having to accept incest, and only his divine command theory can rescue that, because it provides justification for that intuition, right? But as Kylie said, it is not clear how it provides justification for that intuition, that incest is wrong. Is it wrong because just God simply said so? Then it's just arbitrary. Is it wrong because of something else? Then what is that something else? And whatever that something else is, it should be also accessible. Well, not accessible, but it's independent. It stands independent to God, right? So it's either because it's harmful or it's something else. That's another theory. God then just becomes a messenger to try and give us some reasons not reasons, but becomes a messenger to give us guidance and following that theory.
To already established, moral principles.
Whatever it is, whatever that is. If it's not the harm principle, then it's something else. Even Hijab doesn't know what that is, right? He just knows it's wrong and God said so. Well, that's not a sufficiently clear enough moral theory. The problems that arise on his issue, on his little divine command theory, is that first of all, he's got the epistemological problem. He doesn't know whether God actually has a good reason. God only claims that he has a good reason. Two, if indeed God has a reason, and it's a good reason, and it's actually a good, morally good reason, then without knowing exactly what that is, Muhammad Hijab isn't being a good person per se. He's just blindly obeying certain dictates that might correspond to an actual morally good thing. In other words, imagine if I have a computer and a computer figures out all the good actions, moral good actions. This is like a artificial intelligence, and this artificial intelligence is designed to create answers that we can't know are correct, but we believe that the system is correct about those answers. So it could solve like mathematical problems that our human minds can't on its own solve. Something like that might be what Mohammad Hijab is presenting, So God is this kind of supercomputer that can solve certain mathematical questions by itself, or something like that, or moral questions by itself. The issue there is, under certain moral theories, you need to know why what you're doing is morally wrong, and then therefore you have to orient yourself towards that moral end in that way. So the reason that charity is good or not raping somebody is bad is that we have the reasons why charity is good is because it increases flourishing of human beings, or why raping people is bad is because it harms other people. And then when you recognize that and then motivate yourself like that by identifying the reason why I'm not doing something, which is raping people, or identifying the reason why I am doing something, which is helping people through charity, and then you perform an action or an inaction not by refraining from raping somebody, or an action which is giving charity, then you're properly morally motivated because you recognize why you're doing it. And under Hijab's theory, he has no reason why he's doing it, right? He's not properly morally motivated. Yeah. So there's that other issue as well. So he's just blindly following the dictates of a being without realizing why something is wrong. Yeah. So he kind of, on his theory, the wrongness of our action is devoid of any deep meaning. It's this kind of opaque category, and he just follows it. Anyway, but if there are things that are wrong with incest, I'm sure Muhammad Hijab would just say that it's something like this. If I pushed his foot to the fire, if I held his foot to the fire, I should say, it'll be something like this. Incest is wrong not because it causes any sort of harm. Incest is wrong not because a brother and sister, when they get together, it leads to a genetic disorder, a disability in a child and an offspring. Incest is not wrong because of any of those reasons. The reason incest is wrong is because it is wrong for a brother and sister to be together. It's wrong for a grandmother and a daughter, a great granddaughter, to be together sexually. It's wrong for a father to have sex with a daughter sexually. The act in itself is inherently wrong, independent to any sort of effect, right? So even if there's no consequence of the action, it's still wrong. Yeah, by kissing your mother on the lips in a sexual romantic manner, that is inherently wrong. It doesn't need to lead to a negative outcome. Like a bomb doesn't go off in Jamaica. The sky doesn't fall apart. A disease, sexually transmitted disease, doesn't occur. It's not because of those reasons. Intrinsically wrong. But wait a minute. If that's the case, then the atheist also has that opportunity to say the same thing, right?
Exactly.
It's inherently wrong. Now, what does Muhammad Hijab say to explain, justify why it's inherently wrong? He doesn't know. So the atheist is in the same position as well. We don't know it either. There you go. So the atheist, can you see that?
Madan, he has one trump card here. In God we trust.
Yeah, but like I said, he doesn't really know what to trust there. I mean, it's like me saying in atheism, on no God, I just trust, an instinct, right?
Right. No, I just wanted to mock that. Sorry, I didn't want to mock anybody, but just wanted it's written on the I think American money, right? Dawah basically, right? In God we trust. Okay, sorry, just
because ultimately he's blindly trusting God on faith because he doesn't have that reason, right? And but if the atheist really badly wanted to, just could not find any reason to promote, justify, rationalize incest, and wanted to prohibit it and think it's morally wrong, he also has that accessible to him. It's just deontologically wrong. It's like a deontological wrong. Thou shalt not murder in all circumstances. It's absolutely wrong. It's inherently wrong for a brother and a sister to have sexual relations. Right. So now here's the other issue that might generate. The person who is promulgating the harm principle might not be able to consistently hold that outlook. If somebody is saying that all action, all behaviors, and so on, whether it's right or wrong, has to be analyzed through harm, then that person doesn't have that sort of avenue. But not everybody thinks that. Not every atheist or naturalist necessarily has to hold that sort of belief. Right, that harm is the only way. Harm could be one way, and there could be other reasons why something might be wrong. And if push comes to shove, that if atheists think that a brother and a sister getting together is wrong, he has the exact same rationale that the theist has, which is that a brother and a sister getting together is wrong in and of itself. It can be further articulated and maybe even articulated in a harm sense. So you can make the argument that a brother, sister, grandmother. You can make the argument for a conservative argument for the preservation of families, for example. You could be a atheist conservative with a attenuated or watered down or moderated form of harm principle that recognizes that in terms of legal and moral regulation of behavior, we should not intervene, the state should not intervene, or people should not intervene and be busybodies and regulate the affairs of people if they don't cause any harm to others. And you can believe that, but simultaneously also believe, however, the preservation of families is a government interest. It's a societal interest, that we need to preserve families because it's overall, on aggregate, good to maintain strong social and familial bonds, right? You can make the argument that homosexuality doesn't violate that, but brother-sister incest, mother-daughter incest, or grandmother-granddaughter incest does violate that, because it harms at the very heart of preserving good families and good family relations, right? So I could make the argument, let's say, if a brother and sister comes along, and they at the age of 27, or one is 28, one is 27, they realize they have feelings for each other. I can make the argument is that, look, you've been brother and sister for such a long time, right? This is a unique sort of relationship, unique sort of biological relationship, right? We want to preserve these sort of familial relationships. Would you really want to destroy almost your brother and sister relationship by engaging in a intimate sexual act, right? Because ultimately this feeling that you have might subside, probably will subside, and you can engage in these sort of feelings with other people. Why do you need to do it with your brother and sister, right? This sort of argument you can do for in any other situation as well. For example, two friends who have been friends forever, and then they decide after a long time, after being friends, that they're going to turn their relationship into a sexual one, right? Now, not every single moral wrong is a strong moral wrong. It could be something as simple as that there is a peripheral issue associated with it. Yeah. So if you're gonna start a business at the age of 80, well, there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with starting well, actually, wait. What is the advice that you give to somebody if you're starting a business at the age of 80? Well, you're 80 now, right? You might want to be concerned about whether or not you can actually successfully operate a business. Or let's say you make a promise to somebody, and you want to not fulfill that promise because of for some reason. You've got some secondary reason why you can't fulfill that promise. Well, somebody might say, on the strictest sense, it's not wrong to sometimes violate promises, but that doesn't mean we think there's no moral considerations involved at all in breaking a promise, right? There might be, even if there is a secondary reason why you should break the promise, like you've got to go to work. Well, you made a promise. So we might scold them, condemn them, and say that he's engaged in a morally wrong action. Yeah, not everything has to have a strong sort of state interest where something is banned. Yeah, lying is another example. Lying to people is not regulated by the state, but that doesn't mean it's not morally wrong to lie to people. It's still it's being dishonest to somebody, deprives them of the truth, it misleads them, and it can cause harm, and so on. And these are conversations that we're having all the time. And in the same sense, if a brother and sister all of a sudden decides to transform their relationship into a sexual one, is there some moral considerations that they need to take into account of? What is it? What moral what are the intuitions, quote unquote intuitions, that are being generated? And then we need to articulate and give color to those intuitions. Why are we having those intuitions? And it's because, biologically speaking, for the longest part, our brother and sister relationship has a different feeling to it. And to turn that on its head, isn't this kind of morally unproblematic act? There are some issues with it. Yeah, you've been a brother and sister for a very long time, and you're turning it into this other sort of relationship. And you might say that for any other relationship as well, like an employee-employer relationship, or long-lasting friends who's had a platonic relationship for a very long time, and they want to now turn it into a sexual one.
Teacher-student relationships and all
Yeah,
this.
but those involve power dynamics. Those involve power. I'm talking about even
those
outside.
have a dynamic pretty much,
Outside of power
So
dynamics. Even if there is no power dynamics. For example, if there's a brother, if there's two friends, and they've been together for a very long time as friends, and then all of a sudden they want to turn their relationship into a sexual one. Well, you may say there's nothing illegal. There's no reason for the state to intervene and regulate that sort of behavior and ban it. But that doesn't mean it's not morally questionable to some extent. It probably is. On the ground, in real life, in practice, we would say that. Yeah, somebody who's been friends for like 30 years, and all of a sudden now they want to turn it into a sexual relationship. One point of view could be, well, go for it. One point of view could be there's nothing significantly wrong about it for the state to get involved. You know, people do turn their relationships from one category, which is a friendship, into a very long friendship, into a loving, intimate sexual one. But at the same time, what you would say, but think about it though, think about it for a while. You have been friends for so long, you've just been friends, and that's a worthwhile preserving relationship to have. Yeah, do you want to now turn it into this sexual one where it can jeopardize your entire friendship? You would say that. Yeah, if Kylie and you have been have a friend for a very long time, and all of a sudden you're deciding to turn it into a sexual relationship, that would be a moral consideration to weigh before you turn it into that. Society should talk about it. And in the same sense, then we can talk about brother-sister relationships, mother-daughter relationships, saying that these are unique sort of familial relationships that should not be easily just at the click of a finger think that we can just convert it into a sexual one. There is something wrong with it. I submit that this sort of answer that I'm giving is closer to and better than what Mohammad Hijab is trying to give, because he's just saying it's just wrong. But that's the intuition that he's trying to argue. Brothers and sisters shouldn't get together, right? Well, that's what I'm saying.
I agree, Madan. Agree.
And I'm giving a reason. At the very least, I have a reason. Like So that is the reason, then I've given a reason. There you go. At least I have the reason.
That's definitely a much better reason. One more point I would add, and then Madan we should move on, right? Is that I think Khali initially mentioned this point that it seems like any command that God makes could be arbitrary, a moral command. Basically, incest is wrong, could be, and this could be seen in effect, basically, within Islam or within the Abrahamic religions, that at certain point incest was considered not bad, basically, because if you believe that Adam and Eve had children from within themselves, and the whole humankind, got reproduced from those two, then at certain point incest was rampant pretty much within their communities, and then at certain point then God decided that no, incest is bad. So yeah, it seems like it's random and arbitrary pretty much, right?
And
anyways, we should
just one more thing. The legal acceptability of homosexuality does not necessarily translate into the social acceptability or the morally unproblematic nature of homosexuality. It just means that it's not sufficiently damaging to the world that the law needs to intervene and interrupt, and therefore it satisfies the standards of the harm principle, right? But that doesn't mean that there isn't anything at all wrong with any form of homosexuality, right? Let's say you do have a child that is a homosexual, and you might be okay with the idea that homosexuality is okay overall, but there are some issues in the sense that, would you just blindly necessarily just go click your finger and go, yeah, homosexuality is just a good thing? You're a homosexual, okay, fine. I don't think that's a good parent. You are acting as a good parent by just clicking your finger and going, no, it's fine, right? I think you should think about it, because if you are homosexual, right, you might have issues in respect to conceiving children, right? So I would be like, are you sure you're homosexual? Are you sure? Because if you go down this route and you are you can't, for example, you're not attracted to the opposite gender, you're attracted to your same gender, then you've diminished the pool of potential candidates who you can mate with. It's now halved, and you can't even mate in a natural biological sense. You have to use artificial insemination, and these are things that are strictly not wrong in a deep sense, but they might be wrong in a peripheral sense, right? When I say wrong, I mean there might be there are problems involved. Yeah. Also, being homosexual in a society that doesn't accept it, that's going to be difficult. Yeah, it's the same sort of arguments for interracial marriage. It's not that we have to think that interracial marriage is wrong or just right. We can think it's generally right and generally not wrong, and therefore the law shouldn't intervene. It's generally morally unproblematic. But there are some issues. For example, if two ethnicities get together, if they're very, 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 very different, there might be some issues so if I have a daughter who wants to get married to this person from a completely different culture, and there are some stigma, or there is some racism, or there is some discrimination between the cultures, I will say, look, although I in principle don't think it's wrong for two different ethnicities to get together, keep in mind, beware before you marry this person from a different culture, that it's going to be difficult for you to integrate in that culture, because that culture hates you. So so this is a far more nuanced conversation that you can have. It's similar to smoking as well. Smoking, do I think is generally?
I agree, Madden. I think we should have this. Sorry, do you want to finish that point?
Yeah, very quickly. It's like smoking as well. Smoking is legally right. The harm principle, legally right. It's not legally banned. If you're going to damage your lungs, you go ahead and damage your lungs. But is it completely risk-free? Of course not, right? You have that open conversation with somebody. Although it's your legal right to smoke, right? You are diminishing your life. You are harming your lungs. You are going to possibly get a disease if you could continue doing it, especially in chain smoking by the time you're 70. Yeah, so you can have this kind of nuanced conversation where you think something is overall not wrong, but has some issues, and you can do that with homosexuality as well. You can after checking through all the issues, you might come to the conclusion that for this person, homosexuality is going to be the only way he can live, and therefore this is the best route for him, because he's not going to be able to have a partner. He's not going to be able to have a relationship unless he does it through the homosexual means. But if somebody's a bit more ambiguous, you'll give them those risks, just like you give the risk of smoking. The risks of being a homosexual is A, B, C, D, E. Yeah, you're not going to be. You might need to go through artificial insemination. You might need to adopt. Do you want to live that life? Yeah, just the way you would talk about smoking. In the same sense, then we can talk about incest. We might think overall there might not be any strict harms through the harm principle prism of thinking. However, there are some issues there. Like do you really want to change your relationship with your mother, with your sister? There are some ickiness about that. You've been so solidified in this relationship for such a long time. Yeah. Last time I checked, unlike homosexuality, there isn't any orientation towards incest. These feelings could fade away. Do you really want to risk all that? Yeah, it's not as though the atheist cannot have those conversations. And guess what? The theist would be having very similar conversations, and therefore you can meet in the middle. So, well, yeah, I'll stop there.
All right,
Yeah.
Madden. Kylie, you want to add something, or shall we move on to the next?
No, I think we can move on.
Next video. All right. Yeah.
The most just, the most loving. Before creation was the most merciful, most loving.
All of the attributes of Allah are eternal. In order for someone to show mercy, they don't have to express it. To be merciful, you don't need to express it. Just like when you're sleeping, you're not being merciful to anyone, but you're still merciful by your nature. Do you believe God is a creator from eternity?
No.
Is God a creator?
God is a creator, but not from eternity.
So did he acquire the nature later on?
I mean, didn't acquire the nature. He's always had the nature. So, sorry.
Thank you.
He's always had the ability.
Thank you.
So he's a creator.
No, he's always had the
So he is
ability.
a creator.
Hear what I'm saying?
You're right now.
He's always had the ability to do it.
Oh,
But there
that's
has been
exactly
a
what I'm
point-
saying.
There was some point where your God was merciful before creation. When was that?
Yeah, once again, I repeat myself. In order to be loving and merciful, you don't need to express it. Exactly. How many times I'm repeating this?
So
Are you hard of
your
hearing
God
this?
was the most merciful, but he was never merciful at all. Before
What's wrong with this guy? Man? Does he not understand simple English?
All right, Ali, go ahead. You haven't spoken.
Did I
for a
select
long
this
time.
video? I'm not sure because I mean
You
I'm
did
not sure.
select this video, I think.
I might have selected that by mistake because I don't know. I mean, I don't find this Hashim's response problematic. I do have. I mean, there is one point that I could raise about it, but that is too philosophical and it's way too deep for me to discuss it in a short response. Because I mean, the point where he mentions that can God have God created did the action of creation in eternity past. That statement, the way he's trying to respond to that, or what he's trying to imply that what God created creation a limited while ago, that is a problematic statement. But I don't think we need to. Let's move on to the next video because I don't think I'll find
Right.
Hashim's response that wrong. I might
I'll
have
just
selected
raise
this video
one
by
point
mistake.
and I'll just run one point and see what you guys think of that point. He said that all the attributes of God are co-eternal with God, right? So are they themselves in themselves necessary existent? Basically, is the question that I have, and I thought I'll probably
That is
run that idea through you guys, right?
that is a question that Muslim philosophers and Muslim scholars actually did face with their concept of Tawheed, right? Because they had this problem of attributes being distinct from each
Co-eternal,
other,
right?
being
Right.
distinct from each other, and that causes a problem because that sort of brings in a duality or at least a sort of plurality in within the
The
essence or within the
plurality of nature, yeah.
plurality, right, within the existence of God. So they have
Right.
tried to resolve this by saying that no, these are all just attributes, meaning they're just all defining different aspects of God, attributes of God, but they're just describing the same being. So they say that it is not plurality in terms of at least the overall existence. There are some Muslim philosophers who have gone to the extent of saying that they have to the concept of divine simplicity, which is in which it says the every attribute is actually the same, and it all boils down to the point of to the primary point of God being existent or God's existence or essence. So according to them,
Right.
everything, even God's goodness, is equal to him being his existence, his creation. So every attribute that you discuss or do you mention, they say that it is equivalent to God's existence. So
Right.
that is to the extent to which certain philosophers have gone. But I think the Orthodox Muslims, they don't usually consider this problematic, although this is indeed problematic because
Right.
their view is
I'm just,
quite according to their understanding or their concept of God, their God is indeed composite. It is not
all right.
truly singular or unit.
Well, just wondering whose thought is this? Who Ibn Taymiyyah's is this
The
Ibn
divine
Taymiyyah's
simplicity,
stance?
divine simplicity.
Right.
No. I don't think it's Ibn Taymiyyah because he's. I think it's called the Islamic philosopher. I don't think Sunnis usually have this concept. This is more found among at least what I understand, because as far as I have discussed this with different Muslims, I've only seen Shias defending this worldview, and particularly even within Shia, a very small group,
A
the
small
Ismail.
minority of
It is, defending this view of divine simplicity. But
right.
Shia's Tawheed is quite it's better than Sunnis because Sunnis God have two right hands and one shin, all that.
Right.
All that problems, but Shia usually don't see God that way. So the divine simplicity,
then-
that concept is actually there.
But then what do they do with the verses where they see all these things? Basically, they
say that
this is like
they
just
interpret
a
it.
figure of
They
speech.
interpret it. They interpret
figure
it.
of
They say
speech,
that it
understood.
just doesn't mean that it's just an expression.
It's an expression, right?
Yeah.
All right, Madan, you
No,
want
no,
to
no.
add something to this?
I don't want to say anything on this one because I spoke a lot on the last one, and this one doesn't interest me as much.
All
I
right,
just want
let's move on
I
then.
just want to mention that Major Reynolds. Have you flagged him already? Like this?
I have.
Yeah.
I have.
He
Flagged
brought
him.
him up
I
earlier.
told him. I just wanted to give him some recognition because he's been a long time follower now. I think a couple of videos. So we appreciate your religious following of us, religiously following
Right.
us.
Yeah.
But here
Thank you very much, Major Reynolds.
Yeah. We appreciate you being here and
And
keep it up.
yeah, we would love to have you on the stream, and maybe if you want to talk, we'll be done in our with our review soon. So if you want, then we'll make the link public, and if you want, you can come and or have a chat with us if you want.
Yeah, let's
right,
go to the next.
Yeah, let's go to the next one. All right, which one did we play? Okay. All right. I'm just trying to think which one that this. Right. All right. I think I lost track of which one. All right.
Start from the bottom of the
yeah,
list.
Yeah. I got it. All right. Can you see the screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, let's go.
In a Sharia state,
non-Muslim.
Can you tell me what is the criteria for us to stone someone in a Sharia state if they commit adultery?
I believe it's stoning to death.
What do we need as evidence for that? No. And I'll tell you something, I've not come across a single case in Islamic history, 1,400 years, of stoning to death where the evidence is established. Because the criteria is so strict. Allah put the punishment as a deterrent, but people don't research the criteria, and that's the point. They just deter. The criteria is the following. There has to be 4 male practicing Muslim men. Why practicing? For example, they cannot look in the window and see someone committing adultery because you cannot spy. Allah tells you not to spy. So if you are a practicing Muslim, you wouldn't spy. If you spy, the testimony is not accepted because you are going against Islamic ruling. They have to witness the act of penetration. So you don't see her entering someone's home. No. They have to see penetration with their own eyes. And then they have to willingly testify X, Y, and Z place. This is impossible unless you do it in the street, in a public place, which even in this country you would have offenses of public indecency. Allah put that criteria because He doesn't want to punish. Allah says in the Quran, مَا يَفْعَلُ اللَّهُ بِعَذَابِكُمْ. What would Allah do with your punishment? He's the creator. He doesn't need to punish you or anyone. Can you tell me?
All right, there are a few problems I'll list quickly, and then somebody else takes it over. Right. First thing first, he says he has never heard of this in any country. I think I've heard a few cases in Iran, right? And what were the evidences? You can question whether they were really good evidence or not. And the testimony of 4 men, he's right about that. The question is, what is the understanding that he gives is nowhere to be found in the Quran, basically, that you have to see the penetration. I don't know where he got it from. If anybody knows if it's mentioned in the Quran, then please bring it to our attention. And that's what all I have to say pretty much, right? And so I'm saying this is blatantly wrong. Whatever his response is really ludicrous, to be honest.
It's quite a funny video, I would say. His response is very
Right.
funny, and it actually shows the ridiculousness of this rule, of this particular ruling, right? Because how would a rule become a deterrent if the criteria for establishing that particular crime, quote unquote, is so impossible,
stringent.
Yeah, it's almost and then he says it's impossible in a way to actually prove or to punish someone for this crime. Why? Because it requires 4 practicing men to actually
Muslim,
witness the
Muslim.
act of penetration. So these are the 4 points that he mentioned, and I'll clarify, Philo. So according to the fiqh, the Islamic jurisprudence, it is indeed understood that they have to actually witness the act of penetration, because I think it is based on some sort of event that happened during the second caliph's life. I think I might be wrong, but it is indeed the case that the fiqh or the details of this particular ruling is indeed
So you're saying Umar's,
implemented in that way.
yeah, Umar's,
Umar, yeah. So
right.
this was the understanding that he took, as far as I can remember. I might be very wrong, but I do know that this is indeed the case, that they have to witness the act of penetration, which is again quite impossible. So if someone sees two people in bed, that isn't enough. Secondly, he mentioned that they should be practicing, and then he said the fact that they are practicing would mean that they cannot be peeking into someone's house or into someone's room. So the fact that one person saw an act, and he cannot call upon other people to witness it so that later on he can establish it in the court. I'm telling you that this is how it works. So if someone actually by mistake, a practicing Muslim by mistake, actually witnesses an act happening, and what he does is he calls upon three other men to witness this act so that he can later establish it in the court, that this very fact would be considered, would make him a non-practicing. Because why are they actually peeking into someone's house deliberately? So now it is, I mean, the whole point of this of criminalizing this act then becomes meaningless, because you are not
Right,
able to
exactly.
establish it. If you cannot establish it, how would this become a deterrent? So it's
Exactly.
quite ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing in the sense that if there's something wrong with adultery, and therefore adultery needs to be punished, but the inefficacy of its detection, the inefficiencies in its detection is such that it requires X amount of witnesses, and it's highly rigorous of a high standard, and it can never be sufficiently demonstrated in a court of law. Then it becomes a redundant punishment, and therefore it cannot successfully regulate that sort of behavior. And as Kylie said, it can't be a significant enough deterrent. So in effect, what he has done, this defender of Islam, in his bid to make it more politically correct and to lighten the quote unquote barbaric nature of the punishment, he's in effect just admitted and acknowledged that the punishment for adultery is purely cosmetic, right? It's just like it's a useless one that is in there in the books, but that is he in effect throws his God into the water there. But
Under the
kind
bus.
of, right?
Is actually exposing the inefficacy of the process that has been proposed by God, or that has been instructed.
Right. I mean, you can keep doing zina as long as you don't get caught.
Exactly.
Especially four men watching you.
And according to him,
practicing Muslim men
and
watching
according
you.
to him, according to him, they'll never be caught. That's what he just said. So the punishment,
right? Exactly. Yeah.
This is another testament to, therefore, if this is true, if this line of thinking is true, and this is what God intended, or this is, first of all, it's weird why God intended.
Weird consequences, by the way. Weird consequences.
Why would God design a punishment that is just completely ineffective? And why would God have a law against something if it can't never be implemented?
Maybe I'd like to point out.
Maybe God wants you to do zina, basically.
And I'd like to point out over here as well that even if someone places a camera in the room in order to make sure that to be able to witness it, right? That would equate to peeking, or trying to being curious about it as well. So that again would make it that if that act non-practicing, right? So that person who has actually made that video would become a non-practicing Muslim, and therefore that video would, as far as my understanding goes, the Islamic court should
Dismiss it,
what do you call
basically.
it? Dismiss that as evidence, right? Should
Right.
reject that to be accepted as evidence, because this was an act, this was a criminal act committed by that witness.
The witness is not Muslim, basically, at that point, basically.
Yeah.
You could improve God's punishment, but this again, it shows kind of the fallibility of this apparent divine being, that he comes out with such a ineffective, non-deterrent punishment that will never apply, and that human beings can improve upon it. For example, in the near future, you could have artificial. Let's say we accept that adultery has to be curbed. Let's say we accept that adultery is wrong. Hypothetically, let's accept adultery is wrong, and we need to reduce adultery. We need to reduce sex outside of marriage. We need to reduce sexual relations with people who are not married, etc. Well, we can improve upon God's own ineffective punishment by creating an alternative effective punishment, or deterring, a more effective deterrent. For example, you can imagine in the future, 100 years or so from now, artificial intelligence technologies which only record when there is an act of sexual relationships with two people who are not supposed to engage in a sexual relationship, right? You can have cameras, for example, installed inside of every home, right? Again, we're hypothetically assuming this is correct to do this, right? Cameras implemented within every home, watching, or not just homes, but elsewhere as well, which records all our activities and will only flag up those illegal activities, including sexual relationships that are illegal, that gets flagged up to this kind of body of people, like police, some sort of police agency, who then will see it, right?
In other words, something like Black Mirror.
Yeah, they're not actually watching.
Like a Black Mirror episode.
Yeah, there's no real privacy concern in the sense that people are not just 100% all the time, 24/7, just watching you through a security camera. It only gets flagged and becomes viewable at the event where the artificial intelligent technology realizes this is an illegal sexual act. That's when the people can look at that particular video and then use that as evidence to prosecute the crime. Yeah, so now we've significantly improved God's aim to stop adultery, and you don't need 4 witnesses. You've got video evidence, and even if you have to adopt it with the 4 witness rule, you could have like 4 random police officers who are practicing. Let's say who sees the
watch that video.
Yeah, and there you go. You just made it halal at that point. But even if you get rid of that rule, the 4th thing, you don't need that. Why do you need? It's a bit arbitrary that you need 4. Why not just? Why wouldn't video evidence qualify? It just would, wouldn't it? It doesn't make any pragmatic or practical sense why you need 4 witnesses when you have that video evidence, and that would, I would imagine, significantly deter this sort of behavior. In fact, it'll be more worthy of deterrence if it's perfect, if artificial intelligence, or near perfect, if it always flags this sort of behavior up, it always records it, and it always produces evidence, it will significantly deter illegal sexual relations. That would be a much better world to achieve God's aim here. And it seems like God did not even think about these things.
Right. Absolutely right.
Exactly, yeah. Shall we move on to the next one? I think there are lots of things that could be added here, but I think we're going to go very deep.
We have covered the gist.
Yeah, we just covered the essential points here. So that's good. We should move on to the next one, right? All right, the next one is, I don't know. It's what are we getting into? This one.
We should be. What would convince you if he comes to me? If God comes speaks to you, you're God, not him. He does what you want to do. Come here, God, talk to me. He comes to you. He's God. You think you're God then? You will convince. Yeah, no, but I'm telling you, the answer stems from arrogance. It stems from a point where you think God will be your slave, in which He will come to you when you want. It's not that you will do what He wants. He will do what you want. Submit to Him. Yeah, that you want God to submit to you. If you see God, then whatever you saw is not God.
Why is that?
Because God, for our eyesight in this life, in this reality, he's not limited in a way which we can see him in. That's why Moses, when he asked to see God, he was not able to see God. The reason he was not able to see God is because it's not because God cannot show him, he's already talking to him, right? The reason was Moses cannot see the Creator and live. If you cannot look at the sun for 10 minutes straight, how do you expect to see the Creator?
All right. Who wants to go first? There are quite a few problems. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yep. Yep.
Viola, you want to say first?
Yeah.
You want to talk about
I think the first problem is he asked the question, what would convince you, right? And he said that was a very honest answer, and that's an answer. Why doesn't God show to me? And that's a perfectly valid answer. If he shows me, I'll believe that he exists. And then you can say, okay, why would God not show? That's a different issue, right? But his answer was pretty fine, I would say, right? Now you shifted the goalpost in a sense that, oh no, God, why would God come and show it to you, show your himself to you? Another problem that I found here, and I'll come back to it. You guys go ahead, and then maybe I'll come back to it.
Let me just round up really very, very quickly. This kind of resembles the divine hiddenness argument. The question, the answer that he gives, which is a question really, why would God show himself? Well, if God is a perfectly loving, merciful, benevolent being in the terms of the Christian sense, or even in the Islamic sense, he's a perfectly compassionate being, then you would expect much more concrete evidence of his existence, and he will probably interact, right? So if you say that there is a perfectly loving father, and the perfectly loving father, a perfectly benevolent father, really likes you, wants to take care of you, and he never shows up, he doesn't exist, he never makes a phone call, he doesn't leave a letter, not even send you a Christmas card, or an Easter card, or a whatever card, that challenges the very notion of a perfectly loving father. So by the same logic, then if you and that's just for humans, if you say there's a perfectly loving God, it beggars belief why he wouldn't be more interactive, right? Instead of playing hide and seek and leaving weird messages and that can be interpreted in different ways, etc. Why wouldn't there be any concrete manifestation? So the answer to his first question is, why would God show you? Then because God then will be submitting to you. Well, no, because if you define God in a particular way, then there's an expectation. That's how it works, right? If God didn't have that definition, that's something else. If God was this kind of disingenuous, extremely lacking in compassion being, or aberrant, evil, malicious being, then maybe you could make that expectation that God won't show himself or be involved in your life. But when you have those attributes of God, then you would expect something more. That's the divine hiddenness argument. So and then the rest of the things that it says, that if God actually shows himself, then you can't see the sun. How would you see God? These are just so stupidly wrong, stupidly insane.
That is laughable. Yeah, I mean, needn't even address. Pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, God designed your eyesight. God designed what the sort of intensity of light that you can take, and God could have obviously designed the sun in such a way that the intensity of the light doesn't damage your retina. In the same sense, God could have designed a way to interact with you without damaging you, because he designs your human biology, your physiology, your anatomy, right? If your anatomy will be harmed by God's presence, then he will design you in a way that is immune to God's presence, right? Which you would eventually see anyway. Apparently, you will have interactions with God in the afterlife. So clearly, it is possible. So this is a bad argument here, that God just can't do it physically. It demonstrates that God is this. God has a deficiency, which he can't create beings that can actually see him, right? And furthermore, I don't think this person, when it says "show me God," he actually says "give me a physical." Necessarily has to be a physical embodiment of God. It could. I'm sure the other things can suffice, like answering prayers, other forms of miracles, interventions in one life, and so on. That might suffice, but to some people that might not be sufficient. I would argue it might not be sufficient because it doesn't demonstrate. I don't think you can actually empirically demonstrate the a God, because you'll have to demonstrate an infinite being, and for an infinite being to exist with infinite qualities, you'll have to demonstrate, let's say, infinite compassion, right? But would there ever be a point where you can show that the being has infinite compassion? So you'll have to spend an infinity of time with God, yeah, and exhaustively watch God create things or create, exhaustively watch God exhaust an infinity, right? In each attribute, like infinite power, infinite compassion, infinite time, etc. And there won't be a one moment or one point in this infinite where you will go, oh, eureka, I've seen every single instance of God's compassion, because there's going to always be some more acts of compassion that God can do, because so it might be it might be practically impossible to demonstrate the existence of a God, because it'll be hard to demonstrate the existence of an infinite quality. Yeah, so I do think what the questioner is asking, show me demonstrate the existence of God, would be near impossible, if not impossible. But having said that, I don't think some sort of provisional, tentative version of a God, like the one that you have in Christianity, where God comes in a human form, I don't think there's any contradiction with that. And God can project his voice. God can send a physical embodiment of himself, which he occupies a body of, like Jesus Christ or something. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I know Muslims say that, then that creates the problem of contradictions, where God is a human and God is a God at the same time, simultaneously. And how can you have just like you can't have a square triangle, you can't have a God be a human and non-human at the same time. I don't think those are real issues. I don't want to go into a tangent to explain why, but just to sum it up in essence, I don't think it's an issue, because there's nothing wrong with, I think, God acting like a human being temporarily by reserving his powers, right? In that sense, he takes on a human form, which gives him a veto almost to leave that human form at some point. So it would be a form of powerlessness that he voluntarily chooses to be in, right? There's no strict contradiction. If somebody thinks, then there is a contradiction in the sense that that's still not a real human, because a real human won't have the powers to veto. Then I might even concede that, then say, okay, but that's still a metaphysically possible state. There's no contradiction if described in that way, where God might not be able to be a real human, which is a human like us, who can never become who doesn't have the power to veto himself out of, like, I can't press a button and become God, right? I am mortal, whereas God is immortal. But God can come and be this kind of almost human being, almost human, with the power of veto, and communicate and interact with with the human species, and then press a button and go back to being God again. I don't think there's any contradiction in that kind of version of it. And that could have been the case. And there you go. There'll be one way to demonstrate the existence of a provisional God. Provisional in the sense that if he acts like a miraculous being, then we have some good reason to at least follow him. It'll be stronger evidence than what we have right now, which is nothing. Yeah, but if there's a person walking around curing the sick, performing many miraculous and magical feats, that might be good enough reason to invest in this being. Does it prove the existence of God? No, it doesn't, because a God is defined as an infinitely he has infinite qualities, and just by performing certain feats, it won't show that. But it'll be good enough reason, at least maybe, to invest time in that being. But apparently within Islam, at least this guy's version of Islam, you can't have any of that. I'm done.
Right. Right.
Yeah. All right. Kelly,
So the first point that he raised, I think you've addressed it in quite a lot of detail, where he says that how are we do we even have the uh, what status of being able to call upon God to show him in front of us? Well, the point is this. I think you've already covered it, but I'll just briefly, maybe just a slightly different angle. Well, he asked us to interact with him, to make sure that we are we find him. So that is one part that he required from us. Secondly, he is an infinite being. So he is not like a royalty, a human royalty or a human celebrity who has a limited form and who can actually interact with a limited number of people at the same time. They have limited time, they have limited time during the day, they have limited strength. So God is infinite, and God is someone who's required us to look for him. In given these two conditions, if he does not give us sufficient evidence of his existence, then that is not consistent with a merciful, with at least a merciful God. An evil God, yes. In fact, if with an evil God, it is completely consistent, but not with a merciful God. So this is just a very short way that I wanted to put it, because I think Mahadin has already covered it in a lot of detail. The second aspect, I'd like to point the second point that he mentioned, that if we are able to see God, then he would not be God. Now, if you notice the subtle way that he said that we cannot see God with our limited eyes. Philo, can you just again play the video, because you'll notice that he said it in a very specific way. He made a very specific statement, and I'll tell you why he made that statement, and why that
All right,
actually, and
let's
then I'll
try.
go to why that actually uh, you know throws away his argument that he's trying to make.
It should be
But he was trying to be very smart. So just at the very end, almost.
you. You're God, not him. He does what you want to do. Come here,
Can
God.
you go
Talk
to
to
halfway through?
you. This guy,
Half
you
point.
think you're God then? You are. You are convinced. Yeah, no,
I
but I'm
can't.
telling you, the answer
I
comes
I
from
think
can't
stems from.
forward
there's a
the
scroll
shorts.
bar down there, even in shorts now.
Can you scroll? Can you?
Yeah, you can. I think if you just go to the red bar down there, can you see the red bar? Can
Yeah,
you
yeah,
click it?
but I can't move it.
You
I
cannot.
can't.
Okay, so
This
then okay, let's play
shorts
it.
can't be. Yeah, shorts can't be forwarded.
Okay, play it.
Right.
Arrogance. It stems from a point where you think God will be your slave, in which He will come to you when you want. It's not that you will do what He wants; He will do what you want. Submit to Him. Yeah, that you want God to submit to you. If you see God, then whatever you saw is not God.
Now just pause.
Why is that?
Now
If you see God,
listen carefully.
then what you
Just
saw is
listen carefully what he's going to say right now. He hasn't said it now. Just listen to
okay.
the statement that he mentions now. Okay,
Okay, the
play.
next one.
Yeah,
Okay.
just play.
Because God, for us, for our eyesight in this life, in this reality, He's not limited in a way which we can see Him in. That's why Moses, when he asked to
Just
see
pause it.
God, he
Pause it now. So he
Right,
said that
right.
in this life
Then
we don't have that eyesight that
Hmm.
to see an unlimited being. Now this is a very strange concept that he's trying to present. He's saying that right now we are limited, and our eyesight is limited as well. Well, in the afterlife, why he said that, why he used the word in this life, because it is a common Sunni belief. It's not a Shia belief generally. Shias don't believe that, but Sunni belief. There is a disagreement about that as well. But there are there are many hadith on this topic. I've mentioned. I just gave a link to Philo just a few minutes ago, which mentioned that in the hereafter, Muslims will be able to see God, right? And so if you can open up that hadith. So, and let's go through that hadith first. So Allah's Messenger said, He came out to us on the night of full moon and said, You will see your Lord on the day of resurrection as you see this full moon, and you will have no difficulty in seeing Him. Now, this is one hadith. I'll give you another one because that's even that's even further. That's even more
There,
interesting.
there is, Callie, there is one more incident that occurs to me is the Mirage
Yeah,
story,
that
right?
also. So there are different
Yeah.
aspects of.
So
So there's a Mirage
that's
incident. Yeah.
right,
So there's a Mirage incident. There is and this is not just single hadith. There are numerous
right,
hadith
right,
in which this. So there are multiple chains of this particular hadith where it has been mentioned that you will be able to see God just like to see you see this full moon. So
right,
what he
right.
mentioned in this particular video that you are not even able to see the sun. How will you be able to see God? Well, you see, God hasn't equated himself to a sun because sun's light is very harsh. But God, even if you see Quran, God uses the word nur for
Noor,
himself
right.
and not the word which has been used for sun. So the word nur has been used for
Siraj,
moon as well because the word nur is very specific. It actually means a very cool light, cool and sort of a
soothing
soft
light,
light. Yeah, cool
soothing
and
light.
soothing light. Muslim often say that it means a reflected light. That is incorrect. What it means is it's because there's a clear difference between the light of the moon and the light of the sun. You cannot look directly at the sun, but you can look at the moon very easily. So moon's light is very soft and soothing, and while the sun's light is very harsh and it's painful to look at. So that is a word that has been used for God in Quran, and you will see that this is the word that has been used in this hadith, where it is said that if you're able to see God in the hereafter, just like you're able to see the full moon. Now the problem is this: is Muhammad Ali, the guy who's the Muslim and Dai in this video, is he saying that in the hereafter our eyesight will become unlimited, will have unlimited potential, that we'll be able to see God, an unlimited being, through our eyes? Is that what he's saying? Or somehow God will be able to suddenly, in the afterlife, he'll have that capability to limit himself and to come in front of us? So this is contradictory. Whatever he's trying to say, so he have problem in both of these cases. How can a limited being, us being limited in any form, whether we are in this bodily form, this physical form, or in the form in which we'll be in the hereafter according to Islamic understanding, we would still not be unlimited, right? We cannot be unlimited because we are creations. Can a limited being uh, see an unlimited entity? Um, Logically speaking, I don't think so. Just particularly the way Muslims put it. And I gave you another link, Philo. If you'll open that up, it is even further. It is even more interesting, and there are multiple chains for that hadith as well. Um, it's very
Mhm.
interesting because it sort of
Right.
uses some very specific words. Yeah. Now, Philo, while you are on this page, just Control F and look for the word shape.
All
Yeah.
right,
Now,
here you go.
just read this. Uh, okay. Now it says that Allah will come to them in a shape other than they know, and will say, "I am your Lord." They will say, "We seek refuge with Allah from you. This is our place." And now this is a very interesting hadith, and actually the problem is that the way they have translated this hadith is a very strange way. It's not actually correct, or true, not. I would say it's not correct because the word that has been used in Arabic is the word adna surat. Now, the adna surat means a lower form. So
Lower
what
right,
it
yeah.
actually says is in this hadith is that in the afterlife, Allah will first come to the believers in a lower form, and when He'll do so, the believers would say, "No, we seek refuge from Allah, with Allah from you, because you are not our Lord." Then Allah will come in His shape, the true shape, and then they'll be able to recognize Him and say that you are our Lord.
So,
So
Kali, the
yeah,
lower shape, the Adna Surat here,
yes.
does it mean that the human shape or something? Because
No, it doesn't mention.
that is the
It
lower
doesn't.
being. It doesn't
it doesn't
mention that.
so
It
it can
doesn't
it
mention
doesn't
that.
mention what would be that adana surat, the lower
Right.
form, but
Right.
it does use the word adana surat, which
Right. Which
literally
is the
translates to
lower form. Yeah.
lower form.
Right.
So
Right.
over here they have translated in this way because they don't want to give that impression. They don't want to expose the hadith actually. So once again,
Right. Right.
this is not how. I mean, they have a logical problem over here. How can God, if according to their conception, God cannot take any lower form, cannot limit himself? Number one, how will a limited form be able to see him? Number two, uh, according to this hadith, Allah will come in a lower form or in a specific shape in front of them, first in a different shape, let's say, and later on in a different shape, which once again means that God is changing shapes, which is again illogical according to the Muslim theology or philosophy, because God cannot change, right? God
Yeah.
cannot change.
Let me just quickly say that what Mark Reynolds says is what I was saying as well, and what we're kind of saying as well, in the sense that if you're an all-powerful being, the idea that you can't limit yourself seems a little bit strange, right? It might make sense to say that an all-powerful being can't diminish himself and be God at the same time, because if God can diminish himself, sorry,
Yeah.
an all-powerful being cannot diminish himself permanently and be God at the same time, because then God will not be God. But God is, by definition, a being that can't stop being God, right? He can't just kill himself, right?
Yeah.
Commit
He cannot
suicide.
kill himself.
Yeah.
I also
Right.
so just I'll just make a statement. I also sometimes say that God is doomed to live eternally.
Yeah, exactly. So that might make sense. Okay, I'll grant that God can't permanently commit suicide or permanently limit himself, because that then he would stop being God. In which case, some people may still say that true omnipotence means he can do everything, and one of the things that he should be able to do is stop being God, right?
But
So
any
Yeah,
action.
but these are illogical. I think these are not valid points, right?
I,
I don't know.
I think any
I don't.
action that God can take shouldn't be the action itself doesn't become diminishing. Basically, I mean, even if God lowers that, it is just because it's God that action itself
yeah,
becomes
I
less,
mean,
pretty much, right?
what I'm trying to say is, if he diminish himself permanently, that seems
Yeah.
a bit unsettling, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Some philosophers may say, some theologians may say, in fact, God can permanently become weaker and become like a man, right? And then he'll no longer be God. God will no longer exist. But that instead of that being a deficiency on God's part, that would this sort of God would be much more powerful than a type of God that can't do that. Because if you have two theories of God, one theory on one model of God can diminish himself and become a human, let's say, and a second model of God can't diminish himself and become a human, because for that would contradict the idea that it's a not timeless God, or contradict the idea that God is all powerful because he now stops being powerful, right? So, but some might say that the model A of God is actually a more powerful version of God, in the sense that he can do everything that model B can do. He's omnipotent. He can do every single thing, every logically possible thing that model B
And
God
plus
can
some
do.
more things.
And plus more. Yeah, plus more, which is he can become a human. That's one
Right.
more
Right.
extra thing that he can do. So some theologians make that argument, but let's throw out let's throw out the idea of permanent disfigurement or diminishment, permanent suicide or something like that, permanent lowering. What about temporary lowering, temporary diminishment? I don't think there's anything unsettling about that.
Right. Right.
If God
There's,
temporarily reduces his powers, he still has the power to go back to his
but then
original state.
by definition, isn't God unchanging?
Yeah,
It's full of contradictions, right? I
yeah.
mean,
When
from
you add
start
when
to
you,
end, pretty much.
when
Yeah.
you, yeah, when you add that element, but we have to suspend that for a minute now, because
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Islamic
We have to
theology,
be clear that we are suspending that particular aspect for now, and
yeah,
based on that
Right.
we are
Right.
discussing.
yeah. If
Right.
God
Right.
if God can just diminish his power for 1 second, for example, let's say he creates lots of human beings and he knows everything about each and every one of those human beings, but he chooses not to know something about Mahdi. He lets Mahdi to have the privacy of his own mind, and the content of Mahdi's mind is not known to God. Well, he chooses voluntarily to refrain or be ignorant about Mahdi. Now, he can at any time reverse that decision and impede and interfere with Mahdi's mind and know the content of my thoughts, but he chooses not to. What's wrong with that? This is not a permanent diminishment, permanent disfigurement of God. He voluntarily and only temporarily suspends himself from knowing the mind of God. Now, is God still all knowledgeable here? Well, he in principle can be knowledgeable of God, of Mahdi's mind, but he chooses not to. I don't think that there's nothing metaphysically absurd about that. And so I don't think there's anything. What the Muslims are saying, that if God chooses to limit himself, then he's no longer God. I don't see that. If God chooses to limit himself by his own volition, temporarily, and he can always revert back to his original position, that's a logically possible state of being, right? That might not be the Islamic version of God, but
Exactly.
that's not logically impossible. So if Muslims want to say that this is just impossible, I don't think that's, or metaphysically absurd, I don't think it is. I think God can, and guess what? He does that. He's already does that in some sense. God has temporarily diminished himself from, let's say, interfering with every single affair of humankind. He voluntarily chooses not to intervene, right?
And even Islamic God, Martin,
Yeah,
descends to the first heaven every what is that? No, what is that hadith? Kali might correct me on this. Every night does he descend to the first heaven?
Yeah,
Or
every night, I think in the last part of the night, he descends to the clouds.
the first heaven,
His
basically,
the
right?
first
And
heaven,
which
the
is
lowest heaven. Yeah,
the lowest heaven,
and he
right?
listens to the
In
prayers. Yeah. So yeah,
yeah.
so
and this is again,
that is kind of
yeah,
diminishing himself in a sense,
exactly, it
right?
is. It
Himself.
does. So there are many, yeah, as I was mentioning, there are many aspects. There are many ways in which there is Muslims do allow God to diminish Himself. So even you might have heard Ali Dawah mentioning this, having this problem to deal with this, and he said that God enters the creation. We don't know the kafia of it. Kafia meaning the status, or as to the how of it. What would you call it? If I know the word, the kafia,
Kafir, yeah, it's I
the
can't recall the proper translation as of
yeah.
now.
I mean,
Yeah.
how actually God would do it, we don't know it, but somehow God is able to enter His creation. Well, this very fact diminishes God, and if you believe that, then that means your God can enter creation in a very similar way. I mean, Muslims often criticize Christians for saying that Jesus is God and Jesus was a human. Well, if God can enter creation, then God can enter creation in the form of a human as well. So I don't know. So that is a problem for them. So there are several ways, the several parts of Islamic theology which undermine this rule, this principle of God not being able to diminish Himself.
Yeah, I mean, God diminished himself when he gives us free will. God diminished himself when he gave Satan autonomy, right? God,
Right.
he voluntarily gave Satan power. He voluntarily gave us power to engage with free will. God's not going to solve every tiny part of our affairs. That's the Islamic theology, right? We have been given some autonomy and freedom and to make decisions on our own, and God can't simultaneously give us free will and control our actions like a robot or like a puppet master, right? So in order to give us free will, he has to not be a puppet master and not control our actions, and voluntarily give up control over our brains. He voluntarily therefore gives us independent, autonomous, self-determined brains that has free will. He accepted this diminishment, so therefore God doesn't have control over certain things by giving us free will. That's a voluntary diminishment, which is consistent with my theory that I don't think that there's anything wrong with the concept of a God and him voluntarily reducing some of his powers.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. God.
So yeah.
When God, even this within Islamic theology, creating Iblis then Iblis leading millions and billions of people astray, cursing him, is basically diminishing him. So he's basically diminishing himself in a sense by
Yeah.
doing that. All right. I think we are done with this video. Kali, you wanted to say
Yeah.
something?
No, I think we have dealt with his responses quite well and quite
Right.
lot of people.
So we are done with all those responses videos. I don't think we have any more. Maybe we can bring other 5 next time.
Yeah.
But in the meanwhile, if there's anybody who wants to join and talk, is more than welcome.
Yeah, I mean, Major Reynolds is right. I mean, when you start thinking about these concepts, you end up in loads of ambiguity and paradoxes, contradictions. Concepts break down. It's just a difficult. It's a philosophical conversation about attributes, and yeah, it quickly starts to become paradoxical.
Yeah, I was just thinking that Muslims often point out or criticize Christians on the fact that the Jesus or the Christian concept of God is composite. It has
It is
parts in
ludicrous
a
and
way,
all those
right?
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was just thinking about it that the very fact that God is omniscient, that is, God has knowledge, that makes God composite as well. Because what is knowledge? Knowledge is a set of beliefs. Now, it is a set of beliefs, which means there are individual beliefs within that complete set of knowledge that God has. Now, if that is indeed the case, then God's knowledge is God as well, because God cannot have parts. And each knowledge, each part of that knowledge is, if according to the Muslim conception, each part of that would be God as well, because if God does not have part, otherwise I mean, this is a problem, because you have to say that God has unlimited knowledge, which is a unlimited storage of information, unlimited number of beliefs that God has, and each belief is a part of God. Therefore, God is made up of parts. So I think the very fact that God is omniscient also proves in a way that God is composite. Mahadin also did mention
That
a few
limits
days ago.
that limits God, right? If
Yeah,
God is
I mean,
made up of parts, that
yeah,
limits God pretty much.
exactly. And I mean,
It's
this
again a
this this is
contradiction, right?
also this is also a problem that Muslims, I've seen Muslims only raising this problem, that why the universe cannot be eternal, or something like universe cannot be the necessary being, because they say because it is composite, it is made up of
Necessary
parts.
existent, you mean, not being.
Sorry.
Yeah. You said being, but it should be existent, basically.
Yeah,
Necessary
yeah,
existent.
the necessary existent. Yeah. So it says that the universe cannot be eternal and necessary existent, because it is composite, it is made up of parts. That is what Muslims claim. So that again, if that is a problem, if something cannot be necessary, something composite, something made up of parts cannot be necessarily existent, then your concept of God is also a composite being, a composite existence, and therefore it cannot be a God as well.
I think we should now move on to some callers, because I think there's some people.
Yeah, sure.
Let me just say something though. I do think I need to leave. Right. It's getting a bit late for me. I've got some plans for tomorrow, so I need to get. Basically, I just need to go. So unfortunately, I might not be able to stay with you guys whilst you having a discussion with some of the audience members. But let's get some of these people on. I think Rishab here, he wants to come on. So if you can, just give them the link. And I think maybe Major Reynolds wants to come on as well. Yeah.
Yes.
So I might just stay for 1 or 2 minutes and then leave. Let's see.
All right. All right. The link, I've made the link public, so anybody who wants to join, have a chit chat for a few minutes, is welcome. The link is in the chat, in the comments rather. And so yeah, this was a decent conversation. I think we covered a lot of ground, basically 5 videos, even though short, but that's the caveat of these short videos and these philosophical discussions. They tend to go longer than you usually imagine them to, right?
Yeah.
Because unless until you feel empty if you haven't covered a lot, all the points, and you haven't responded to all those points. So, Rishabh, your device is not connected, but let's try. Your device is not connected.
Make sure he doesn't want his video on if he
Yeah,
doesn't want it on.
yeah.
So keep him in the
Rishabh,
background
your device is
until
not
we are sure
connected.
that he wants his video on.
Yeah, let me try. Okay.
All right. Okay.
All right, Rishabh, you're on.
Hi,
How are you
hello.
doing?
How are you?
How are you doing? Good. How are you
I'm
doing?
good. I'm good. I'm good.
Hi, Rishabh.
All right. I'm assuming you're from India, or maybe you're from US.
I'm from India,
All right.
Delhi.
All right. Okay. All right. Great. What do you want to comment on the videos? Did you look at the stream?
I already told. I do not know the topic, but what we are talking about today?
So we picked 5 short clips from Dawah guys. Basically, you know what are these Dawah guys? These are pretty much the UK based guys, and they do have their own channels, and they post these short clips making certain points about, mostly these are, they are they tabligh about Islam. Basically, they spread their Islamic apologists, and so
Okay.
we wanted to refute their arguments, basically, to the 3 of us,
Okay.
pretty much. Yeah.
That's good. Of course, we
Right.
need to.
Rishabh, what do you believe, Rishabh?
Yes.
What is your position in
I am a Sanatani Hindu.
Before you guys continue, let me just say my farewell, because I do need to go. Okay. So Rishabh,
All right,
nice having you on.
Nice meeting you, man.
Yeah, it's good having you on, and hopefully you can have a good conversation with my co-hosts. Yeah. So hopefully I'll see you in the next stream. If you enjoy the conversation, please subscribe. Yeah. And you want to talk to me?
I have been subscribing for a long time.
Good. That's great. So if you want to talk to me, I'll be on next time, and we can talk then. And Major Reynolds as well. And Major Reynolds is saying that he's feeling shy. So I'm sure we're not going to bite. I'm going to be gone.
Yeah.
I'm the most ruthless one here, so I'll be gone. So I'm only joking. I'll be gone. So don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We'll be very accommodating. But yeah. So
we are very accommodating.
Yeah. Bye from me, everybody. Okay.
All right. Bye, Madan.
All right. See you later.
Talk to you
Bye-bye.
then later. Bye.
Have a good stream. Bye bye.
All right.
Bye, Madan. Major Reynolds, don't feel shy. I mean, we'll have a good, friendly conversation. Of course, if you have been a regular listener to our streams, you know we are very cordial and very friendly towards our callers. So don't be shy. If you feel like joining, definitely join.
Yeah, Major Reynolds says he doesn't have anything to add. Surely you can just come on and say hi if you want, or maybe add a few points. Generally, your take on what you think is the Dawah scene in wherever you are from. What happened to Rishabh?
Oh, did you
Rishabh
think that
dropped
we are
out.
ignoring him?
I think so. I hope he didn't feel that we are ignoring him.
Rishabh, you can come on.
Felt that we
I
are
was
ignoring
just
him?
about to talk to you.
Yeah. We were just about to talk to you. Sorry, Rishabh, if you felt that we were ignoring you, or you probably just lost the link. If you can, please join back again. All right. Kelly, we'll wait for Rishabh to join. I hope he didn't feel that we ignored him, and
yeah,
probably a mistake on our part if that's how it happened. But all right, you have anything to add, or shall we just I don't know.
No, I think it was a good stream that we had. We covered a lot of videos We tried to give short responses, as short as we could. I
Right,
think
right, right. It's generally almost impossible not to go at length when you're dealing with those really, I mean, those questions that can ramify into some deep philosophical, problems or questions, basically. And once you go into that, rabbit hole, there's no coming back, pretty much, right? And that's how it
yeah.
happens sometimes, because you want to address a certain point, and then you just it unwinds so deep that you just can't come back unless you address all the points relating to that.
Yeah, you don't feel satisfied until and unless you have already mentioned or stated out loud all of your contentions with a particular
Right,
argument.
right. I mean, there were a few points within those videos as well, and I said, okay, let's not just go
Yeah,
into
of course, we did.
that deep, right?
Even I
But
did
we
ignore,
covered pretty much, yeah, we pretty much covered all the points.
and I think
But yeah,
that is that is where we need to exercise
restraint,
our
basically,
yeah,
yeah.
restraint, because we have to sometimes just present the strongest ones, the strongest argument, and not every argument.
Right, 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 right. All right. So shall we finish the stream then? What
Yes,
do you
I
think?
think if nobody's coming on, let's end it.
All right. All right. So yeah, I think that this was a great stream, and big thanks to Madan and Kayali for being. I mean, for all three of us, basically, we are a part of this
Yeah,
channel.
thanks to you,
So
fellas.
anybody who's listening to this stream, I would request them to just share as much as you can. Like it first. Do comment whatever is in your head. Just make a comment, because your commenting helps us spread the video more, because somehow the YouTube algorithm picks it up and highlights it on home pages or whatever. However it does that, we don't know the whole detail of it, but it does help. So if you comment it, I hope that you comment profusely, and of course relating to the stream, whether you liked it, or we could have made certain point in a certain different way, or we missed certain point, or something we misrepresented from the opponent's side, or something like that. Whatever you feel like, be honest, comment it. If we can respond, we'll definitely respond, but at least it'll make us get noticed, and that's what we are hoping, that we at least increase our audience that listens to us. So yeah, thank you very much again. As I said, like, subscribe, and share, and press the notification bell. So, and we'll
And
try to
comment
do
as well.
streams more frequently as well. Kelly,
Yeah,
sorry.
after the stream, please give some comments as well.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So, Kelly, thanks everybody. Bye bye.